Today. I'm Dorothy Copeland, and I lead global partner programs for AWS. Presenting with me today are Barry Russell, who heads up business development for AWS Marketplace, and Stephen Orban, who heads up our AWS enterprise strategy. So today I'm going to talk about partner trends and transformational things that we're seeing partners do to grow their business in the ecosystem. Barry will go into detail about an overview of AWS Marketplace, as well as some interesting updates that we're really excited about. Stephen Orban will present the bulk of the presentation, talking about how partners can approach enterprise CIOs and help them get their work done and work effectively. So first, I wanted to share with you some trends that we're seeing in the AWS partner ecosystem. The number of partners are growing very quickly, with well over 10,000 AWS partners around the world today, and almost doubling every year. The other interesting thing is that we're seeing partners themselves grow. Their businesses are growing much more quickly now than they were in the past. An example is that we just announced 2 new premier partners today, Corp.Info and LogicWorks, and both of them were just getting started with AWS 12 to 18 months ago. And now they have over $3 million in AWS spend in their businesses today, annually. We're also seeing an increased demand from enterprises for managed services as they're trying to figure out how to migrate and manage their AWS workloads. They're looking for really qualified MSPs that can help them do that. We're also seeing enterprise use a lot more software as a service. So they're not using as much licensed software as they are software as a service. So that's an increasing trend that we're seeing. And then finally, starting in the last 12 months or so, we've seen a big increase in enterprises using Marketplace, not just for test and dev, but for actual production workloads. So I wanted to share with you some of the cool things that some of our consulting partners are doing as they look to build out their business on AWS. One is that they're starting to do packaged solution offerings. So what that means is that they are having offerings that they provide customers that include consulting, includes AWS, it includes defined outcomes, and all at a fixed cost. So for example, one of our partners offers a big data package where they'll work with a customer on specific big data goals and package in their consultant fees and the AWS usage all in one fixed cost so their customers can understand what they're getting themselves into. The other thing that we're seeing similarly is packaged service offerings. So we have several different partners who are offering customers 3-day VPC implementations. One of our partners is also offering an 8-week Redshift Jumpstart package. So they'll define goals with their customers and offer them fixed price for the consulting work that they do on AWS for their customers. So we're seeing a lot of these kinds of packages are becoming increasingly popular with enterprises. The next thing we're seeing is fixed price migration. So we have some partners who are essentially taking a cloud factory approach to migration. So they'll offer customers fixed price for every server that they migrate from on-premise over to AWS. And what customers are telling us is that they really like to be able to plan in terms of the costs that they'll have in migrating to AWS. So it allows them to actually move more quickly because they know exactly what they'll pay for as they shift servers over. The other thing we're seeing is a number of our partners are starting to offer security as a service. So a really good example of this that we went public with a couple of months ago is our premier consulting partner, Cloud Nexa, and technology partners Trend Micro, AppDynamics, and Sumo Logic all came together to offer a security as a service offering. It includes managed security, application intelligence, and machine data analytics on AWS, all offered in an on-demand fashion. Finally, another interesting trend that we're starting to see is our consulting partners are essentially helping our enterprises create DevOps within their organizations, especially enterprises that have IT resources that they're trying to repurpose in this new world of cloud. Our consulting partners will come in and do a 3-day workshop with enterprises and help them train their staff and get them familiar with policies and procedures that they need to do with a DevOps approach. So next I wanted to talk to you about some of the technology partner best practices. So technology partners are typically companies that provide applications and software on top of AWS. So again, we're seeing a lot of our technology partners, even those who've had traditional license model delivery models, moving over to SaaS, and their SaaS businesses are growing very quickly on us. And part of it is because customers are really demanding reduced complexity. They want decreased time to value, and they just want to pay for what they consume. So SaaS allows enterprises to do that. The other thing we're seeing is similar to consulting partners, our technology partners are taking a little bit more of a solutions-based approach. So whether it's really focusing on key workloads like big data or on APN competencies such as storage and our digital media competency that we just launched this week, as well as verticals such as life sciences, healthcare, financial services, and government. So we're seeing a lot of engagement between technology partners and our teams that are focused on these workloads as well as verticals. And so we encourage you, if you're a technology partner, to think about how you might orient yourselves around more kind of a value add for your customers as opposed to just talking about your technology. The next thing we're seeing is more and more of our technology partners are engaging with our consulting partners. So they'll work with them to deploy test drives or to go into a customer together. One way that you can find more information about our consulting partners is to look in the APN directory or talk to your partner manager for recommendations. The other trend that we're starting to see is technology partners who have a really strong channel are bringing their consulting partners to us. So we're enabling their consulting partners on AWS so that they can help deploy that particular technology partner solution on us. So we definitely encourage that. So the other trend the other thing that I wanted to, I needed to mention is make sure as a technology partner you're doing a lot to promote your solution. This is sort of obvious, but a lot of our partners ask us, well, I've built this great solution on AWS. I think it's fabulous. I think everyone should buy it. Now, how do I promote it? So to get started, we'll typically tell technology partners to create a business documentation or a battle card for us to share with the AWS field team, internal SAs, our partner team, so that we can get familiar with the technology that you provide. The other thing that we like to do as you're getting started is provide us with at least one customer. It's really important for you to be able to talk about customer wins, write a case study, put that on your website, put it on our website in our partner directory. And so that's oftentimes our partner managers, the first question they'll ask technology partners is, tell me about your customer win. So that's a really great way to get started. The other piece is that you should, once you are standard and higher level, you should really take care to make sure you have a great directory listing within the APN directory. So we have a lot of space there for you to put a description about your company, links, case studies, reference customers, discussion about the products that you provide. And I think that's a really underutilized resource that a lot of our partners don't spend enough time on developing. So that's the other piece of advice, particularly for technology partners, that's important. The other thing is that as you grow, we're seeing technology partners start to work with consulting partners to create test drives so customers can come and try and buy technology partner solutions. You also should consider listing your solution in Marketplace, which Barry will be talking more about today, as well as look to become an APN competency partner, and then consider offering your solution in a free try and buy sort of way or in a proof of concept way. And we have funding that I'll talk about that can help you with that if you qualify. Finally, the last trend we're seeing, as Andy announced today, is technology partners going all in on AWS. So you might say, well, what does that mean? So it's really partners that have declared that they're using AWS as their infrastructure platform of choice. that they have plans to fully support their AWS-based deployments now and in the future. And that's really important for customers to have a lot of faith in their software vendors that they are going to use, they'll continue to support their AWS deployments going forward. So we're seeing this both for SaaS-based applications as well as for licensed software. And as Andy mentioned this morning, we launched a few new ones just today. MicroStrategy, Tibco, Software AG are among the few that we announced. So next I wanted to talk to you a little bit about AWS resources that you can use as you build out your practice. And one thing I'm really excited to announce is later this afternoon on the APN portal, which all partners have access to if you've registered with us, we're launching a really in-depth paper on how to build your consulting practice on AWS. And it goes into depth on how you think about deploying a solution, how you might think about even hiring, what kind of skill sets you need within your organization. So I definitely wanted to do a plug for that. The other thing we're launching today is a new partner webcast that's available within APN. We have a host of recorded instructional videos, both technical as well as on our programs, where you can find a lot of resources. So I wanted to also cover our APN competency program. This is a program that I call it our customer obsessed program. So it's really about enabling our customers to find partners who have certain capabilities and proficiencies. And so we even launched 2 new competencies earlier this week, digital media and healthcare. And digital media partners have demonstrated success in helping media and entertainment companies by delivering solutions that assist in creation, management, and distribution of digital content. And then healthcare competency partners have demonstrated capabilities around building solutions for healthcare payers and providers that store, process, transmit, and analyze in a secure way patient information. So we're really excited by our competencies. You're going to see more of these this year, probably at least about 6 more, because we want to make sure we're covering the wide variety of workloads and verticals that are important to our customers. So next we have something called acceleration programs. So this is for standard and higher partners that can apply for funding that helps subsidize AWS training. So this is really important for consulting partners so you can get your certifications. We also provide go-to-market funding as well as POC credits and funding. And so we're excited to announce or kind of preview a new acceleration program for database and big data opportunities. And so this is really enabling your customers to try out AWS database services and big data services, and we'll help you get there. So if that's something of interest, you want to send an email to this email address down below. Next, we have the MSP Partner Program. And that's a program that we launched at reInvent. It's really about providing technical and business enablement to managed services providers. And interestingly, we also, in conjunction with that, it also includes a rigorous independent third-party audit that ensures partners' ability to both migrate as well as operate AWS by following our operational and security best practices. So it really gives, again, this is really about being customer obsessed, giving our customers the ability to have a lot of confidence in our MSP providers, especially as enterprises are increasingly asking us for recommendations on our top MSP providers. So if this is of interest, we have a session at 3:15 where you can learn more. And then we also have a SaaS partner program, which we announced at reInvent in November. And then we're soft launching that kind of in a preview mode today with 50 SaaS partners. So we'll be talking about that at 4:30. And again, that's actually to help companies whether they're just getting started on AWS or whether they want to migrate their license delivery software over to a software as a service model. And so we have a bunch of different technical resources, business resources. We're launching weekly office hours, a tab within the APN portal just for SaaS partners, and a lot of reference designs for SaaS partners. And we'll have additional documentation later in the year that our team is putting together. So I also wanted to mention Marketplace, which is, we're seeing our more and more of our technology partners list their solutions up on Marketplace, and our consulting partners find technology partners there and deploy it for their customers. And here to tell us more about Marketplace is Barry Russell. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So before I get started, I did want to mention during the keynote, Andy talked about a new part of our catalog that we launched this morning, which is AWS Marketplace for desktop apps. Similar to the server catalog that we launched now 3 years ago. This month is our 3-year anniversary. The desktop app catalog will allow customers to go in, purchase, bring their own license, and deploy free and paid utilities on a monthly basis inside of the workspaces that they have running. If you have any questions about that or anybody wants to know more, you can see me after the session. I'll be hanging out in the back of the room. So if we rewind 3 years, we think about, why did we do this? Why did we build the AWS Marketplace? A lot of services and features that AWS launches are things that we think if we solved for our own business, for AWS and for Amazon, it would better enable us to be agile, and it would better enable us to innovate. And so we knew that with infrastructure and data services and the network topology that AWS had, we were beginning to solve and had solved a lot of the problems in terms of launching infrastructure, network topology, and again, moving data workload to cloud. But one of the problems that still existed, both for technology partners, so ISVs that were seeing transformation to cloud, as well as consulting partners that were working with customers that wanted to move quickly to cloud, was the software. We all know that we use software to perform tasks and move data around. It's the thing that layers on top of the entire stack. And so 3 years ago this month, we launched the AWS Marketplace with the goal of reducing the friction around procurement of software, the deployment of software on top of AWS, and frankly, building a channel for sales for both our technology partners who develop software, our ISVs, as well as our consulting partners who are beginning to work with customers and rapidly move these workloads to AWS and move them to cloud. And so if you think about the enterprise software industry in 2015, it's going to be a $310 billion business. And we know that finding, selecting, purchasing, deploying, I think we've all been part of this process, whether we were salespeople that helped delay that process or we were buyers of software. I've been both. It takes a long time. And so we wanted to figure out a way to solve that. And so if you also think about the fact that there are roughly, give or take, according to IDC, there's about 35 million servers left in the world, okay? And on top of all of those servers, guess what's running? Software. And so as those servers begin to migrate from the on-prem world to cloud, something has to happen with the software and the software license model that those servers are running for the software that's been deployed on top of them. It changes, quite frankly. It changes more to a consumption model when you move into cloud. And so lastly, if you believe what IDC says, right, whether it's 2017 or 2018 or 2019, 50% of these 35 million servers, give or take, are going to move to cloud. And $310 billion, 50% of that, those licenses sitting there, are moving to cloud. And once they do, they need a new consumption model. And so that's the primary reason why we built Marketplace. In addition to delivering the value for customers, we also wanted to help partners, technology and consulting partners, better take advantage of customers that were moving workload. So a quick refresher for those of you that don't know about the Marketplace, you can think of it as a software catalog where AWS customers that have accounts set up, whether those are accounts based on credit card or invoice billing for large enterprise customers, they have access to a catalog of over 2,100 products with roughly about 700 software vendors today and growing weekly, where the customer can go in, choose the product they want, the price plan they want, whether that's an annual subscription, monthly, or an hourly, convert easily from all three. In other words, you can run an hourly product and literally hit a toggle switch and move to an annual subscription after a few-week proof of concept. We gave access for these 2,100 products to customers around the world that have an AWS account. And what you look at here, if you haven't seen this before, is the main page of the catalog. You see a product offered by Trend Micro. You see an EC2 instance size and a price associated with that. You see a region that you can deploy from. A couple of weeks ago, we moved a major portion of the catalog into the Frankfurt region that we recently launched. It now gives customers in Germany the ability to launch software inside of that region as well and handle all of the privacy concerns around data that German customers face. And then lastly, down at the bottom, you'll see a similar theme when the customer is accepting terms of EULA from the software vendor, clicking to purchase, and then immediately deploying that software, running on top of EC2. And some of the trends that we see are consulting partners, as Dorothy mentioned, now coming into the marketplace and finding different solutions, network, infrastructure solutions, security solutions, application development, media workload solutions, storage, database, and so on. And they're launching the software from Marketplace at the same pace and speed at which they're helping the customer move the infrastructure workload, launching services like EC2, S3, RDS, Redshift, et cetera. All this tied to the customer's bill. Amazon handles all the billing on behalf of the vendor, collects from the customer, and remits software proceeds back to the vendor that's listing the product. We get this question a lot. I know Andy mentioned it in the keynote as well. What types of customers, do enterprise customers use this? The short answer is yes. It's increased quite dramatically in terms of the number of enterprise customers now coming into Marketplace. I think on this 3-year journey, we now see enterprise customers, many of them listed up here, that buy multiple projects across multiple different departments inside their company. And I would have you think about the purchasing that's happening not at the Uber licensing level, where they're covering every employee in the company, but at the departmental level, where you might have a VP of a particular department that has a project that has to be tested, executed quickly, and they're using infrastructure services and software deployed from Marketplace to go and test that, and then build on top of that if it works. And then another thing that we mentioned at reInvent, which is pretty important and actually pretty cool, we built a region and we're now able to talk about it, for our sponsor of this project, the CIA. We built a region that is named C2S. And as part of that region, one of the things that this community asked us to do is please don't innovate on just the infrastructure and data services, but also innovate for us on the software. We want the Marketplace catalog. And so later this year, as we mentioned at reInvent last year, later this year we'll begin to move over the majority of the catalog as it exists now into the region utilized by these 17 agencies. And they will be able to utilize the AWS accounts that were provisioned and assigned to them to purchase software without having to go through the normal government procurement chain or the normal government procurement approval process to purchase software. So that takes them from dealing with, let's say, a couple dozen vendors that have the money and marketing power and personnel to deal with these types of firms, and opens it up to all of the different companies that are in the Marketplace catalog, including some of the super interesting startups that have seen success and growth, such as SoftNAS, inside of the Marketplace catalog. This will be coming later this year. We encourage all consulting partners and technology partners to reach out to Dorothy's team or my team about more information about how to be a part of this catalog. It'll be a pretty interesting opportunity and exposes your software to hundreds of thousands of employees that may not have access to it otherwise. And then lastly, I wanted to just touch on what happens when a vendor puts a product into Marketplace. Does it suddenly just get purchased and it's a money grows on trees type of thing? And the answer is no. You have to think of us as a new sales channel, a channel to access customers who are leaning heavily into cloud, who already have an AWS account and procurement vehicle established, and who want to rapidly purchase and deploy software alongside of the workloads, the infrastructure and data services workloads that they're moving to AWS. What's the first thing to do? The first thing to do is make sure that your teams are competent in AWS and utilize all of the programs and services that the APN and Dorothy's team have to offer, so that both your product development and engineering teams, as well as the consulting partners that typically service your software, are educated on how to deploy and manage that software in AWS. And then in terms of go-to-market best practices, our field, the global AWS sales and SA teams, they are compensated on software that customers purchase in the marketplace. Okay, they receive quota relief and commission for the software purchases that are made in Marketplace, and they're out now educating customers about the different categories and products that are available. Dorothy mentioned battle cards. We use the same thing. ISVs and consulting partners develop battle cards for us. We distribute those out to the field so that our field understands what particular storage solution X or database X or security product X might do, for a customer that's considering securing a workload, for example, using WAF against a website that they're developing and moving to AWS. So I would encourage anybody that is an ISV or interacts with an ISV that they compensate, the ISVs compensate their sales teams so that they align with the AWS sales team as well in the field. Second, our most successful partners have built website assets to describe their product deploying and launching on AWS and from Marketplace. And they've used it as a vehicle to take customers from their website and that particular page directly into their product detail page in the catalog so that the customer can point, click, purchase, and deploy. Third, this is something that's done across most of the BD teams at AWS, is develop quarterly go-to-market plans, right? Targeted funding, the type of digital marketing that will be done, the customer events or webinars, take advantage of the programs that the APN has to offer there, and work with the AWS Marketplace or the technology partner BD team on quarterly go-to-market plans. List your full software suite. Right? Customers want variety of choice. They want deployment options. They don't want to do just test and dev. They want to do enterprise production. Some companies dip their toe in the water. I would argue that it's better to do both. Put something in that they can test and dev and try for a few weeks. Put something in that they can run a pretty heavy production workload against. And then last, we have a POC program that we tie in with the AWS program as well. It allows for our ISVs and consulting partners to bring forth an opportunity, work with an AWS sales team, fund both the software as well as EC2 infrastructure charges during a POC. And the Marketplace team specifically has go-to-market funding, both dollars as well as EC2 credits to apply both to POC programs as well as go-to-market. So in a nutshell, that's a quick snapshot of where we are with the Marketplace. And again, I'll be in the back to answer any questions you have. But now, I'd like to turn it over to Stephen Orban, who will take you through the rest of the time we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. I'm a big fan of the AWS Marketplace, as you'll all soon discover in just a moment. And thank you, Dorothy, for including me today in your partner plans. One thing I would like to start by saying is thank you all for coming. I'm amazed by how big the partner ecosystem has grown over the last several years. I can remember as a customer in 2012 coming to reInvent for the first time, and I sort of couldn't believe my eyes at how many partners and how many people are building their business on top of the AWS platform. And reInvent is our large conference inside of Vegas, and our summits generally tend to be a little bit smaller than that. And I was walking around the summit floor this morning with Brent Jay, who runs our support organizations. And I couldn't help but notice that the partner ecosystem that's here at the summit today seems to me at least a little bit bigger than what we had in reInvent back in 2012. So thank you all for your support, and we couldn't grow this business like we had without you. So my name is Stephen Orban, and I joined AWS last year in an effort to help our enterprise customers understand and accelerate the benefits that they can get from cloud computing. So I'd like everybody to imagine with me just for a moment that it's Friday morning. You've had a long week of work. Maybe you've been traveling around visiting customers. You had a long flight home last night. Maybe you had a few belts on the plane and you're feeling a little bit tired. and you're in your kitchen in your pajamas, smelling your favorite coffee, looking forward to sitting down at your kitchen table, catching up on emails for the day, and working from home. And just when you settle in, you get an email from a CIO who you've been trying to build a relationship with for some period of time, and she wants you to come in to help her with some initiatives that she has going on this afternoon. So what are you going to do? Your plans for working at home are sort of shot. What are the things that you're going to spend your time on over the next few hours to learn so that you can go in there and have an educated conversation with the CIO and earn her trust so that you can build an effective partnership over time? So I hope by the time we're done having our conversation this afternoon, you'll have a much better sense for some of the things that you should be looking at. I'm going to assume that most of you are familiar with the cloud value proposition. I'm not really going to go too much into that. This is more about the things kind of on the periphery of the CIO Solar System rather than how to sell and position cloud. I realize that there's a lot of ambiguity with the CIO title these days. Sometimes there's a CIO, sometimes there's a CTO, sometimes there's both. The CTO reports to the CIO or vice versa. I'm seeing in a growing number of cases there's a chief digital officer, which may mean that the CIO isn't quite keeping up with the business expectations. Whatever the case may be, the stuff that I'm going to go through today is broadly applicable to whoever the top IT executive is and whatever their title happens to be. So first, a little bit about my background. I started my career as a developer at Bloomberg, and for the first 7 years there, I spent across a variety of different leadership and development positions across their equity and messaging platforms. And then in 2008, when the markets took a turn for the worst, Bloomberg found themselves in this uncomfortable position where they had been growing for 30 or 40% year over year, and now the company was looking at negative to flat growth. And a handful of their pretty high-profile customers were going out of business. So the company used this as an opportunity to invest into new business verticals to drive additional revenue streams into the company. And I was fortunate enough to get together with a handful of colleagues who I had worked with in the past, and we had this hypothesis that if you treated a professional athlete like an equity and a professional sports team like a portfolio, and we applied the same sort of analytics and software analytics on top of that we developed for the Bloomberg terminal, on top of the rich amount of data that's collected in professional sports, we could build a business that would help professional sports teams manage their operations. Turns out we were right, and we had a lot of fun building that business over the course of the next several years. And the company invested in 15 or 16 different business units, all with a roughly similar idea across different industry verticals. So we had Bloomberg Gov, Bloomberg Government, Bloomberg Wealth, Bloomberg Law, Bloomberg Real Estate, so on and so forth. And what we found was the way you procure, manage, and deploy infrastructure for a 25-year-old highly operationalized business like the Bloomberg Terminal is not the way you should do it for a bunch of startup businesses that you're not sure are going to be around for 6 months. We were spending many millions of dollars on infrastructure and making all of these businesses far less attractive investments than they should have been. So in 2011, I was asked to do something about this, and we built a private cloud to get efficiencies across all of these different business lines. So on one hand, we did make the costs much more attractive, and the P&Ls were heavily lightened. But on the other, we still had far fewer features, and we're moving much more slowly than if we were able to take advantage of the pace of innovation that AWS had amassed up until that point. All of my customers, the CTOs of these different business units, were still relatively unhappy. Everybody felt that we were sort of wasting our time and that we would be more nimble and better served if we used the resources that we're working on the private cloud towards product development. So I resigned to the idea that building a private cloud is not a good use of company resources. We'd never be able to keep up with the commercial vendors, and that we should move on. So when I became the CIO of Dow Jones in 2012, I vowed not to make the same mistake. So I'm not going to go through my Dow Jones experience in too much detail today. For those of you who are interested in it, I did a keynote at the Enterprise Summit yesterday, and I talked a lot about that, coupled with the enterprise journey, and it's definitely worth checking out. But I will say that what we were able to accomplish as a result of AWS was nothing short of transformational. We went from 70% of my resources focused on IT operations to 70% of my resources focused on product development, while reducing my budget each year and delivering way more than the company ever had. I certainly won't claim things were perfect, because they definitely weren't, but they were way better than they ever had been. And last year, I had this moment of clarity. It became very clear to me that this cloud thing is inevitable. It became so obvious to me that companies should not be investing their scarce resources on things like managing infrastructure that don't drive revenue into the business. So in 2012, when we started our cloud journey, we had an awful lot of skeptics, both internally and externally, that thought we were crazy for trying to use the cloud in a meaningful way. And not only did we prove them wrong, but we surpassed even our own expectations. So now I feel like I have the best job in the world. I get to take my experiences transforming IT using AWS, combine them with the experiences of other enterprises who are doing the same thing, and help IT executives all over the world be successful in transforming their business. So this picture illustrates what I like to call the CIO's Solar System. Each of these topics will influence the way the CIO is likely to think about cloud. These are the topics that I would cover if I was having conversations with an executive team about joining their team and becoming the IT exec. By extension, I would never take a meeting with a CIO without understanding at least as much as I could about everything in every one of these topics. So having a good understanding of the CIO's Solar System will make it much easier for you to earn their trust, and much more likely that you'll be able to become an effective partner over time. So each of these topics will serve as our agenda today, and I hope a useful resource for you as you continue to engage with your customers. So let's talk a little bit about the CIO. This is the most important piece of my talk this afternoon. If there's nothing else that you take away from today, it should be this. The CIO is a business executive. IT is the means in which they deliver value to the business, but it is a means to an end. In just about every CIO publication, the Wall Street Journal, CIO Magazine, whatever, you'll find a handful of articles that suggest how the CIO needs to be trying to vie for a seat at the executive or board table, and that they need to understand the business in order to be effective at delivering technology solutions. So even when you have a case where you meet a CIO who may seem like they're more like Milton from Office Space, you should treat them as though they're a key part of the company's executive team. They certainly view themselves that way, and they desperately want to be viewed that way by everybody else. I'd also add that CIOs are feeling an increasing amount of pressure to drive revenue and certainly don't want to find themselves in a position where they're viewed as a cost center. So most CIOs did not get to where they got by chance. They definitely had help, and that typically means that they're able to lead teams, influence people, and make effective use of partners. So I use the word partners very deliberately here. You shouldn't think about how to sell to the CIO, because everybody tries to do that. You should think about how to partner with them. Cloud has so much to offer to the enterprise community and every organization for that matter, that if all of us was just another vendor trying to pitch our solutions, our customers wouldn't get the most benefit. CIOs talk a lot. Listen to them. Even when it seems like they're just tooting their own horn, they're giving you useful bits of information that you'll be able to use to help make them successful. They're counting on you to do that. I had a principal consultant who was working with me when we were starting Bloomberg Sports in 2008, and we had some pretty rough deadlines coming up. When you work in sports, unfortunately, they don't move the start of the baseball season for you just so you can get your software done. And he sat me down and he said, look, this is going to be a rough couple of weeks and months, but we're going to do everything that we can, Stephen, to make you successful. And I sort of thought about that, and I'm like, yeah, okay, you're just doing what you need to do so that you can earn my business. And over the course of the next several months, he actually backed that up. And he and his company brought everything to the table. They did everything that they needed to do to make sure that we delivered on time. And not only that, they used their PR department to drive a bunch of press to the things that we had accomplished, get me on stage at places, talk about the things that we had done, and really drove a lot more attention than we would have otherwise had to some of the things that we had done. And so he really backed that up with making it personal and making me successful. And over the course of the last 6 years, it's safe to say that I've sent well over $10 million of business his way. And I think that that's something that certainly we should all strive for. So there are politics in every executive team. Does the CIO report to the CFO? Is this going to make cost more of a factor? Does the CIO report to the CEO? And does that say something for how they view technology as a differentiator into their business? Are there multiple CIOs across multiple different business units or globally distributed departments? Who has the influence and who's making the major technology decisions? There's no one size fits all answer for that. It's always going to be different, but it's something that you should look into and try to understand as much as you can. You should try to understand what motivates the other executives and help the CIO use that to their advantage. Most CEOs will want a competitive edge and keep their resources focused on their business. Most CFOs want to save money, but not only can the cloud help you save money, but it can also help them improve cash flows when you don't have to come up with costly capital expenditures to start projects or for hardware refresh events. Marketers want to be able to respond quickly to changing market conditions, quickly update their websites, and have access to better analytics. So where is the shadow IT, and how can you help the CIO get around that or get their hands around that? I think a lot of companies have been successful in building businesses and selling into shadow IT, and I think that's all well and good, but you should empathize with them when that situation happens. I'm sure if everyone in this room got a budget of $100,000 only to find out 3 months into their fiscal year that some other department had spent $40,000 of it and they had to figure out a way to make that up in their budget, you'd be pretty upset too. So try to understand that the position that they're in, and see how you can help them get their arms around that. Never talk to an IT executive without having at least some understanding of their financial positioning. They're always going to want to talk about this. They're always going to bring it up. They're always going to talk about how they understand the financial positioning of their company and how that's going to influence their decision making. Rising profit and revenues will likely mean bigger budgets, which could certainly be good for both of us. But make sure in that case you don't go in with cost savings as the main value driver. I had a meeting with the CIO of a very well-known and very fast-growing company a couple of weeks ago, and he told me that his primary purpose is to make sure that he's able to scale out the IT inside of the organization with the growing global workforce. Nowhere in that conversation did money come up, and that was certainly not their primary concern. They were looking for a global distribution, elasticity, and be able to scale as quickly as they could. On the other hand, decreasing revenues will likely lead to an increase in price sensitivity. So these are some of the things that you need to know to understand how to position cost benefits and what sort of opportunity you're after. Public companies issue public statements about their business strategies and P&Ls. Use them to understand their business pressures. There's a ton of good information in there. There's a lot of noise too, so you have to have some experience at digging through it, but it's definitely worth doing. Public companies will likely also have some more short-term sensitivities. They may not be in a position to make big investments in some quarter because of some other thing that's going on in their business because of the way that they need to report to the street. I always like to look at what the IT budget is as a percentage of revenue, and what does that look like in comparison to their peers and their competition. This will give you an idea of how important technology is to that company, or the IT is to that company, and whether or not IT is going to be viewed as transformational. Likewise, never go talk to an IT executive unless you have a good idea of what their staffing strategy is. Especially in the partner case, if you're working for an agency or a consultancy shop. Every company will have a different mix of contractors and employees to run their operations. And since you're looking to augment their existing staff, you should consider what their propensity is to work with others. One way I've always done this is to multiply the number of people that they have in their staff by some factor commensurate with the market. So in New York, I would use a figure like 180,000, whereas in some place like Florida, I'd probably use 120,000. And then I'd look at that as a percentage of their total IT budget. And if it's less than 50%, there's probably a pretty good chance that they rely on partners. And as it reaches up to the 70–80% level, it's probably more likely that they use their employees to do most of their work and ongoing operations. And you want to take that into account and maybe be a little bit more modest about what you're suggesting. So let's talk a little bit about the enterprise IT map. I talked about this a lot yesterday in my presentation, so you can definitely find out more about this online. But when I was a CIO, I tended to look at my department as having 5 distinct different parts. And while I was always tweaking my organization to best meet the needs of the business, I always came back to this view when thinking about how to optimally split responsibilities across a large IT footprint. So in the middle there, you have business applications, which are the technologies that drive revenue, digital products, brand websites, mobile applications, point-of-sale systems, things of that nature. Next to that, you have corporate applications, which are sometimes commonly referred to as back office, email, productivity, ERP, finance, HR, legal systems. Next to that, you have end-user computing, which generally consists of desk-side support, desktop management, device management, MDM, the IT support function. And then underneath that, and what's tend to be centralized to support these previous three, is infrastructure. And there you have your data centers, server storage, networking, and so on. And then between everything is going to be information security, which is going to be weaved throughout all the things that an IT department does. So let's think for a second about why infrastructure is so commonly centralized. My point of view on this is because it's expensive, it's slow, and it requires a great deal of expertise to do well at scale. So historically, companies have found that it's easier to abstract these complexities away from the other three parts because it's hard. But then think about where do their customers want them spending most of their time? Where does the rest of the executive want them spending most of their time? And I hope you'll come to the conclusion that that would be in the business applications and growing and improving their business. So all of these parts, all the other parts are very important, and not doing them well could certainly hurt your business. But doing them marginally better than the competition is not likely to materially improve the results of the business. Jeff Bezos, Amazon's founder and CEO, often talks about how he likes to think about things that are constant. So everyone in the business community talks about the things that change, like technology, but it's not too often that you hear business executives talk about the things that don't change. And when you hear Jeff talk about some of the customer obsession philosophies that have made Amazon.com so successful over the years, you'll hear him talk about the fact that it's impossible to imagine a future where customers on Amazon.com want to pay more for their items, right? It's impossible to imagine a future where customers on Amazon.com want their items delivered to them more slowly. So we think about this the same way at AWS. What are the chances that a company's customers come to them and say, gee, I really wish you would spend more time working on your infrastructure instead of delivering the features that I pay for, right? What are the chances that the CEO is going to come to the CIO and say, gee, I really wish you would spend more time managing data centers as opposed to delivering features? It's just impossible to imagine a future where those sort of conversations are going to happen. So what have we done about it, and how can you help your customers? AWS has innovated so quickly over the last several years that we now have solutions that reduce the burden of every single part of IT. You heard a lot about this in Andy's talk this morning. Our early services were well suited for infrastructure and security, but over the last several years, we've heard a lot from our customers that while these are great, they still feel like that they're doing a lot of undifferentiated heavy lifting in the other parts of IT. So we've listened and carefully have developed a number of solutions that hit across all these different parts. In the corporate application space, we have workdocs that let you share files across your organization. We have workmail, which is a secure exchange-compatible mail server, which allows you to decide where in the world your content will go. And end-user computing workspaces will allow you to manage desktops for your employees and contractors in the cloud. Help your customers understand a world where desktop support can be done entirely remotely, and with a click of a button, workers in their organization can get a more powerful desktop for just a few bucks a month. As we continue to innovate on the information security space to provide customers with the most trusted, secure cloud platform, we are continuing to make it easier for our customers to meet their security and compliance needs. On top of this, which we just spent a lot of time talking about, the AWS Marketplace has thousands of solutions across every part of IT. We've taken the same concept that has helped Amazon.com exponentially grow its product inventory and have allowed technology vendors to host their AWS-compatible solutions in the marketplace, which have now given our customers the broadest selections of solutions that they can deploy to market in seconds. Nowhere else are you going to find an inventory of IT solutions this large, all of which can be procured the same way that you and your customers are procuring AWS services. Also coming very soon is the AWS Service Catalog, which will allow IT administrators to manage what services and applications that can be consumed by the rest of the organization. This is going to give them an awful lot of control and standards that they'll be able to maintain across the organization. And in addition to the services that we offer, a number of credible software providers, probably some of you here in this room, are now developing some of their solutions on our platform that are helping organizations shift their focus to what matters most to their business. So what I hope that this filled-out IT map illustrates is that AWS can help make your customers more effective across all the different parts of their IT. It means that there are many places that you can start working with your customers, and as they get more familiar with the platform and as you get more familiar with helping them on that platform, it's much more likely that you're going to be able to spread the adoption across many of the different areas in their organization. So this will be slightly different depending on the organization, and a lot of this is going to be dependent on a number of factors for every customer. But this is the trend that we're seeing in organizations that are doing this really well. End-user computing and corporate applications need to rely less and less on the infrastructure as solutions powering their business are run in the cloud. This is allowing organizations to focus on optimizing the business processes associated with these functions rather than on the infrastructure that supports them. DevOps, or some other aptly named Cloud Center of Excellence, emerges as a more cost-effective and agile way to provide best practices, automation, and governance across all of IT. I happen to think that this is one of the biggest opportunities for our partners to go in and help customers make that shift. Dorothy talked a little bit about this when she was up here, and I think there's a huge opportunity to help customers go through their journey and understand how to create these Cloud Center of Excellences and maintain their organizations going forward. This transition frees up precious resources to work on what matters most to the organization's business, developing features for your customers. So I've had the opportunity to talk to CIOs all over the world over the last several months, and this is what our customers are really after. Yes, the cloud can save you money. Yes, the cloud can help you deploy your applications faster. Yes, it can help make you more secure. Yes, it can give you a global reach. But at the end of the day, what AWS brings to large and established organizations is the freedom from the cumbersome and undifferentiated heavy lifting traditionally associated with enterprise IT. Some other things to consider about the IT map. You want to know where security reports. In my case, when I was at Dow Jones, the CISO reported into me, and we had a great partnership and really saw eye to eye on how we wanted to push our cloud strategy forward. In more regulated industries like financial services, it's often that the CISO reports right to the CEO or in some cases to the board of directors. And in these cases, it's going to be critical for you to, over time, establish a relationship there to get sensitive workloads. How many app groups are there within the organization and how much autonomy they have may be an indicator for how much freedom these groups have to experiment and what their appetite is for adopting new services. Large centralized infrastructure groups with lots of authority on the technology direction means that you should be spending a lot of time with them and helping them understand and shape their decision making. To that end, I think in the long run, infrastructure teams will likely be the key long-term relationship. Is there a DevOps or cloud division there now? How do you help them create one? How do you help them understand what that's going to mean for their business? If there is an existing private cloud, who's the supporters? Find out who they are. What can you do to win them over? How can you motivate them to propel their careers forward by learning new skills and understanding how this transition is going to affect their careers? You need to do so very carefully, but if you have the CIO's support, they'll want you to call out those who are blocking them from being successful. I think while it's always best to aim high and try as hard as you can to build a relationship with the CIO, it's pretty unlikely, especially as the organization gets bigger, that that's where you're going to be spending most of your time. CIOs probably have gotten pretty good at delegating and will often want you to work with the people that they trust. So while this is not a perfect science by any means, this table can help you understand where you should concentrate your focus, or at least a good place to start. And make sure that when you're going to ask for time with the CIO, you've got something new to talk about. It won't take many meetings that you take with the CIO where they feel like you're wasting their time, where they'll no longer take your invites. I think the CIO's background is one of the best indicators of the things that will motivate them, and a great indicator about how the company probably thinks about technology. If they're a developer like I was, they're going to be excited about product development. And they were likely appointed because of that background. So the company may also be pretty excited and supportive about product development. If they have an infrastructure background, maybe they're looking to centralize and create centers of excellence and put the right processes and controls around things. I've met with plenty of CIOs who have finance backgrounds, and you can imagine that for them, the economics are going to be paramount. So the CIO's tenure is another great indicator of their appetite for change. Their tenure with the company may be telling for how predisposed they are to the way we do things. How long they've been in the CIO role at that company may be an indicator for how tied they are to the decisions and strategies that they've put in place during their tenure as CIO versus what their predecessors have done. How much of their career they've spent in the C-suite may be an indicator for how eager they are to make their mark. I find that the trifecta is a newly hired CIO who's new to the C-suite. These folks are really going to be looking to make their mark and likely differentiate themselves from the decisions made by their predecessors. It's also important to note that anti-cloud sentiment doesn't necessarily transfer over. Sometimes as CIOs move around, they use that as an opportunity to change their mind on a few things. And there's a great example. There was a VP of infrastructure at a pretty major media company who moved on to have the same role at a different media company, and within a couple of months, where he came from, they were very much, the company structurally was pretty much against moving towards the public cloud. And within a few months of him arriving at his new company, they ended up closing a couple of data centers and migrating entire suites of applications to our platform. So keep that in mind. The more legacy that a company has, the more they're going to be tied to feeling like they need to use their existing investments. Almost all well-established customers are going to be running hybrid architectures for some time. Andy talked about that this morning. I don't know what the time frame is. It's probably longer than 1 or 2 years, but it's certainly going to be less than 10. How much legacy they have to deal with will give you some idea for how long and how important this is going to be to them. You should try to find out when the last big transformation was, where the company made some pretty big investments and some substantial change, and whether or not it was viewed as successful. Chances are, if the company just had a major project fail, they won't have a big appetite for change, and you should be looking to make more modest suggestions for improvement. Security is almost certainly and always going to be one of every CIO's top priorities. They simply can't afford not to take this seriously. In 2012, when I was at Dow Jones, this is what a lot of our skeptics talked about. And I'm happy to see that the industry is beginning to understand that AWS is far better positioned to secure its platform than companies whose business it's not are able to secure their facilities. We need to make this point crystal clear for our customers. I think this is super important. The amount of investment that we need to make in securing our platform and giving our customers the visibility that they need into it is almost certainly greater than what they themselves are able to dedicate to this on their own. Every day, I woke up in the morning petrified because I was running a PCI system and credit cards and journalist sources and all this stuff through infrastructure that I managed, and I was desperately afraid that somebody in my own team was going to do something that was going to expose us and put us at risk. And I wanted every single bit of help I could to help alleviate that concern. I was certain that AWS was spending more on security than I was able to spend on my entire department. So in closing, I thought it would be useful to share with you a handful of the best practices we've seen from our customers who are using the cloud successfully to adopt them at scale within their organization. I'm not going to be able to do the whole journey justice today in the time that we have, but I would encourage you again to find my keynote from yesterday where I go into this in great detail. So the first thing that companies who are successful, what they do is that they provide executive sponsorship. Projects are far more likely to succeed when the boss supports them. Next, they provide opportunities for their staff to learn. Computer science fundamentals have not changed. Only the way you consume and deploy it has. Everyone who wants to learn can transfer their skills to a cloud world and continue to be successful. The cost of experimentation in the cloud pales in comparison to what it does in on-premises environments. You'll be able to learn to be able to do things much more quickly, and you'll be much more successful when you view your new initiatives as an experiment that will provide lasting learning value for how the organization will move forward in the future. Now, this is where I see a lot of customers get stuck. You get to this point, you begin to realize some of the benefits that cloud has to offer. But to take it to the next level requires that the organization really consider making an investment in itself. And I think this is another area when we talk about helping them with DevOps and getting over this sort of hump that you can really help them with. So to move forward, you have to continue to crank on these 3 practices, but you have to do more. So the next thing is that they engage with partners. Much like yourself, the ecosystem of system integrators, digital consultancies, and IT vendors that are delivering cloud-based solutions has evolved quite a bit. We'll continue to encourage our customers to find the partner that's best for them. And I'd encourage you, actually, to continue to identify and educate us on your areas of expertise so that we know what you're building and good at, and we can educate our customers appropriately. Next, they create a cloud center of excellence. So we see a lot of customers who create DevOps organizations, but what you call this and where it sits in the organization is certainly less important than its mission and the support it gets from the rest of the group. Help them with this. Again, I can't stress this enough. I think this is a great opportunity for you to help them build their center of excellence practices and have it spread across the organization as fast as possible. Most large IT organizations have existing IT investments that hasn't yet fulfilled their useful life. Setting up a hybrid architecture will allow them to take advantage of their existing assets while still being able to benefit from what the cloud has to offer. And finally, what I'm seeing is that when an organization fully realizes the benefits that they get from the cloud, they end up instituting a cloud-first standard. And at this point, it's when they reverse the burden of proof from why should they use cloud for their initiatives to why should they not use cloud for their initiatives. So that's my story. I hope you all found it useful. I will stick around for a few minutes if you have any questions. And it's great to meet you. I look forward to changing the future of IT with all of you. Thanks.